You've probably noticed that sometimes on a bright sunny day you can get foliage that really catches the bright sunlight but has quite dark shadowy areas behind it. You can create this effect by adding opaque white to ordinary watercolour. So I'm going to get a clean number 4 brush and I'm going to start by taking some lemon yellow. I'm going to use a variety of colours. So I'm starting with lemon yellow and adding a touch of opaque white. Now because lemon yellow is already opaque, but I'm just increasing the opacity of it. And then we'll start with this dark background that suggests the dark shadowy foliage and put a few highlights in. To suggest a leaf to the viewer, you wouldn't do a little dot, it's more of a dash like that. But we're not talking about carefully painted details, we're talking about an impression more than anything. Okay, so let's try and vary. This scene is in autumn, so we can use a little bit of red. I'm going to add a bit of burnt sienna to that mixture, which creates an opaque sort of orange colour, and we'll put a few in with that. I'm going to add a bit of lemon to that to make it slightly yellower. You can do an infinite variety of colours because of course there's an infinite variety of colours in the foliage. You can add a bit more white, and you can change and vary the colours. I'm going to try a little bit of orioline with the opaque white. That'll give us a slightly different yellow. And vary the size and shapes of the leaves as well a bit. Okay, so I'm going to put a few in with just lemon yellow. No white added to it. This will give us yet another colour, a bit more variation, a bit more acid actually. The white tends to take the acid out of the lemon yellow. A few dashes of that. Bring a few out into the area where the leaves come down over the reflections in the water. And then I'm going to take a number 2 brush, a detailer, a very fine brush. I'm going to take some raw sienna and add some opaque white to that. And using this very fine brush, just suggest 1 or 2 little branches, glimpse now and again amongst the foliage. I'll add a touch more white to it, make it a little bit brighter. It's all about variety though. It's all about varying the colours and the strengths of colours. But as in a lot of areas of watercolour painting, it's important not to overdo it. I think that's enough work on that area. And here you can see this effect in the context of the finished picture. In this one we're going to try and capture the effect of quite a deep layer of snow on top of a hedgerow. I'm going to do this by masking out the top of the hedge with quite a lot of masking fluid. But then I need to show you how that white paper alone won't look like snow. It's what you do with shadow after that. But the first thing is to take some masking fluid and just brush in quite a deep layer of it. I'm making the top edge quite uneven because the snow here has settled on an uneven structure. And you need to make sure with this one, so that it looks like a deep fall of snow, that you put plenty of masking fluid onto it. And then we just need to give that time to dry. Well, once the masking fluid had dried, I put a bit of colour into the background to highlight the top of the hedge. And I'm now going to remove the masking fluid. Without that dark colour behind it, the white doesn't stand out. I'm now going to mix a colour for the hedgerow with a number 6 brush, and I'm going to take some Viridian and add ultramarine blue to it. This creates a sort of turquoise colour, and then I'm going to calm that down and darken it by adding burnt sienna. And now I'm going to apply that, taking care to leave plenty of white, because I want it to look like quite a thick layer of snow. I'm leaving it a little bit dry as well, so that I can leave a few little touches of white amongst the hedge as well, to look like snow hasn't just settled on the top, but has caught some of the branches and twigs on the way down. I'm now going to turn the brush sideways on and continue that dry brush effect. You don't so much paint snow with watercolour as leave the white behind. Okay, just a few more little dashes to break up the white area so it's not too neat and tidy and even, using the very tip of the brush. And now I need to just leave that dark green to dry before we can put some shadow into the snow. Well, now that the dark green paint has dried, I'm going to take a number 4 brush and a thin wash of cobalt blue. Had I used ultramarine blue in the sky, I would then use ultramarine blue in the shadows. So let's just try adding a touch of this here and there. I'm going to try and indicate the curved appearance of the snow as it lays on top. I don't want to go too far into the green. If I smudge the green a little bit, that won't matter, but too much and it could all start to look a bit muddy. Bringing that blue over. The key to this is to put the blue on, but still leave plenty of white. Now let's bring a bit of shadow down at the base of the hedge as well. Taking care not to blur the green too much. And looking at the top, perhaps just a touch more blue into there. I need to leave just enough white to catch the light. And I think that's plenty of blue. You do have to be careful you don't get carried away and end up with no white paper at all. It's actually about finding a happy medium. If it was all white, it just looks like white paper. But a few touches of shadow in the right place transform it. And here you can see this effect in the context of the finished picture. In this scene of a park in May, there's quite a lot of really bright colour amongst the blossom. There's purples and pinks and white, and you might think that it would be a good idea to mask these out first. The problem I find with that is it can look a little bit contrived and almost a bit clumsy. So I prefer to paint the background in and then treat the blossoms separately by using a bit of opaque colour. I'm going to start with a mixture of cobalt blue and cobalt violet, and using a number 8 brush on its side to get the broken effect of the rough paper, I'm starting to lay that in across these trees here. I've got another colour next, a really strong colour called Opera Rose, which I've just added a little bit of crimson to, a little bit of alizarin crimson to calm it down a bit, but it's still very bright, very strong. More of the cobalt blue and cobalt violet. A touch more into that area there, now right up to that tree. And now I'm going to do a little bit more of this, but I'm adding a bit of white to the colours. So to that mixture of Opera Rose and crimson alizarin, I've now added a touch of opaque white. Quite thick opaque white. And I want a real light touch with this. I just want to sort of skim across the surface. But you can see how, because that is now lighter than the background, it starts to have a bit more impact. And it's a case of taking your time and allowing these colours to build up. I'm going to get a little bit more of the crimson alizarin, which is quite a strong colour. Okay, I'm now going to really clean that brush and pick up some opaque white without any other colour in it, just the white itself. Neat out of the tube this, it's quite thick. I'm going to take some off the brush so it's a little drier, and then just try and make some quite subtle marks, just catching the surface of the paper. I don't want to obliterate the previous work, I want to add to it. And I think now I'm going to turn to a smaller brush, the number 2 detailer. And I've done most of that blossom with dry brushwork. I'm now going to suggest a few individual flowers by taking some of the crimson alizarin and adding it to the opaque white and putting a few dashes of that colour in with the very tip of the number 2 brush. So a few here and there. Put a touch more white in it. Just a few here and there to really appear like highlights. Maybe a touch more dry brush work as well. Bring in a little bit. It works well with that dark green behind it because that makes it really stand out. And then finally I want a few glimpses of branches. So still with the detailer brush, I'm going to mix a dark wash of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, a dark brown. And where we can see some tree trunks here, I'm strengthening those and bringing some fine branch work off them, which you can just glimpse now and again amongst the foliage and the blossom. Important not to get carried away and overdo it though. I think that's plenty of work for that area. And here you can see this effect in the context of the finished picture. So that brings us to the end of the programme. I hope you'll join me next time for some more tips and techniques, but in the meantime, happy painting.
Now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The extended DVD of today's workshop and the book that accompanies this series are now available from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.